watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? And I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on, I put my feet up, and we just sing along. And I can't help but feeling, just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving.
It takes an awful lot of work to get here. The visa was nothing compared to what it takes, at least if you're a married couple and you're trying to figure out, looking around at your house or apartment, oh my gosh, how do I get this to France? Am I going to take all of this? A lot of people say, sell everything, start fresh in France. Well, that's easy for those people to say. Maybe they didn't have a whole lot of stuff that they treasured. In our case, I think my husband initially thought about doing that, but when the rubber hit the road, that isn't what we did. To begin with, my husband was so busy finishing out his career as an architect that he didn't really have time to make a decision on, for the most part, what was coming from every room of our 3-bedroom home that we had back in Florida. And so the first thing that I had to figure out how to do was decide to sell the furniture, because we had already decided we're not bringing any of our furniture. So I figured this is not going to be easy. I'm going to have to take pictures of everything. I'm going to have to measure everything. I'm going to have to post it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. There was another site in Florida, I think it was called Neighbors or Neighborhood or something. So I was going to have to list all these pieces of furniture. And I thought it could take a year to sell all the furniture in the house. It took a lot longer to get rid of everything, let me tell you. So first thing I had to do was take all the pictures of all the furniture that we wanted to sell. The next thing I had to do was go room to room and make decisions on what things in each room we were going to bring. Well, for our guest room, it was pretty easy. We weren't going to bring anything, except for the fact that I had clothes in the closet in that guest room. So I had to figure out which of the clothes in that closet were going to come with me. And then I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do with the rest? So knickknacks and lamps and pictures on the walls, all of that had to be sold. So again, it was taking a lot of pictures, measuring things, writing up listings. I actually spent probably the better part of 2 years selling stuff that we were not going to bring with us. One of the biggest projects that I had was figuring out what clothes, shoes, and handbags I was going to bring. So here's where we're starting. We've got all of this stuff. We've still got some stuff up there on the top. We have this rack. These are things that I wore but haven't put back on in my closet yet. We've got all the purses and things like that hung up. And down here we have all the shoes in shoe bags sort of piled up. They're sort of color coordinated. Now, up here, these are some of Jeff's things. He has stuff in another closet in his office, but we've started moving his stuff in here. So I'm not going to be touching any of his stuff. For my purposes now, what I'm going to be doing is going through all of my stuff. And you see there's stuff in the back there. That's mostly all dresses and skirts. I had to get that entire closet down to clothes for each season that would fit in maybe 3 or 4 foot of space. Do you collect costume jewelry, or maybe you sell it? at one of the farmers markets or online. Well, here's a deal for you. I'm selling most of my costume jewelry collection. Take it all. The price is listed below. It's a take-all opportunity. There are some pieces of sterling in here, mostly all costume jewelry, but here and there there's some nice collector's items, rhinestones, glass pins. Here's a vintage Sarah Coventry. There's some bracelets. As I said, some of them are sterling silver. You got to pick through, but again, it's a buy all opportunity. You take the entire lot and do with it what you want. I even have some bags of loose beads if you're a crafter and you want to make things with jewelry. So there's lots there too. I thought that I had maybe 100 pairs of shoes, but turned out I had about 250 pairs of shoes. So this is the bin of red and pink and purple shoes. I hate when I open a bin like this where I love most of the shoes in here. It's going to be very hard to figure out which ones I'm going to get rid of. So far, I've got 2 of these bins emptied, and I would say I've probably listed, maybe 15 pairs of designer shoes on Poshmark. So if you're a size 6.5 or a 7, you may want to check out my Poshmark closet and see if you can get some great deals. I only posted things that are, high-end designer fashions or brands that are popular brands that I know people are looking for and would love to save some money on. So we got 2 bins, and I think I've got 8 or 10 more to go. And here's more with the shoes. I just grabbed another bin out of my closet. And this one's all gold and silver shoes. So, and there's my pile. Those are shoes. At the moment, they're shoes I'm keeping. I've already pulled out the ones I'm not keeping. As you can see, I'm quite a distance away from getting this down to a dozen pair of shoes and a few pairs of booties. I have to laugh myself every time I say that. So I went through all of the bins of shoes that I have, and I narrowed it down to, 1, 2, 3, 4, plus this one. So now I'm down to 5 bins. I had 9 bins. Now these shoes, they were on my floor, and I was just gonna, I don't know what I was gonna do with them. These are shoes that are like casual things. Like Toms, and there's some booties, and there's more Toms, and things that I tend to wear right around the house. Well, these I don't wear right around the house, but I wear them to go out. So Jeff got tired of walking around the shoes, and he grabbed one of these empty bins because I had a bunch of them in the garage. So he came in with this, and he said, okay, I'm not going to deal with these shoes like laying all over the bedroom floor. So he put them all in there. These are what was left because I couldn't categorize them. And they're things I still wear. And then we just put them in this bin. Put the lid on this. Clips on. And then we're shoving this under this little bench I have at the foot of the bed. And so for now, it's sticking out. I have to leave it that way because I just can't figure out what else to do with this. Now you can barely see the box, right? Yeah, there's Bella. Okay, who am I kidding? Of course you can see the box. I don't know what else to do with it, but for now, it's there. So I feel like I'm just moving one pile to another room, and then another room, and another room. This is the pile, actually, this is not shoes. This is the pile of the shoes that I have listed on Poshmark. These are my Betsy Johnson booties that have the dust bag. And as I listed them, I just brought them here into my guest room and put them on the guest room bed. So hopefully this will go away, this pile, because as I said, I feel like I took them out of the bedroom. I listed them on Poshmark. Here, we got to get rid of the shoes in total. I'm sure you agree. So many shoes. That was me trying to figure out what shoes to bring to France. So I had promised my husband I was going to get that 250 some pairs of shoes. I was going to get it down to a dozen. I know you're laughing. He was laughing. I'm laughing. And no, it didn't happen. But I did get it done. Same thing with handbags. I had to figure out, well, which ones am I bringing? And it turned out I brought, for the most part, any of my designer handbags that I had. They were all definites. They were all coming with me. And then I went through the non-designer handbags and I got rid of a lot of them. I either sold them or I donated them or I gave them away. So we are selling our Christmas tree. We are getting ready to move to France in just a couple of months, and unfortunately we can't take it with us. So exactly as you see it, you can bring a truck, wrap it in a blanket, take it home, plug it in, and it's ready to go. Totally trimmed. It's got ornaments, lights, balls. This trim is actually from the 1970s. They're little icicles. So it's a really pretty garland I've had for most of my adult life. So save me the trouble of having to take the tree down. Come and get it. It's yours. You can light it, have an extra tree up for the last few days of the holiday. We are getting ready to move to France, and this is just one of hundreds of things for sale. But right now, this is just the tree. So come and get it. Those are decisions that I had to make way ahead of moving, and that's why the more time you allow yourself from making the decision, this is where we're going to go, and this is when we want to arrive, the better, because it does take a long time. You want to try to make some money selling those things so that when you get to France, you can replace them on this end if you intend to replace them. So I spent pretty much a lot of the 3 years before we moved figuring out what's moving, what's not moving, taking all the pictures, posting them on Craigslist, answering the people who called, meeting with people who came, selling things. In the end, furniture sold a lot faster than I expected. About a year before, I think it was maybe a year and a half before we were ready to move, I listed our dining room set on Facebook Marketplace, thinking, well, I'll start now and hopefully by the time we're almost ready to leave, somebody will buy the dining room set. Nope. Somebody contacted me and they wanted to pick it up 3 days later. And I called my husband at work and I said, well, what do you think? They want to take the dining room set. What are we going to eat on for the next year and a half? And he said, let them have it, because ultimately you needed to get rid of it. So he just moved a patio table that was out on our lanai. He moved that into the kitchen, and that's what we ate on for the last year and a half that we lived in Florida. The same thing happened with our bedroom set, although I didn't do it too far ahead. About, I guess, 3 months maybe before we moved, I thought, okay, well, let's give the bedroom set a try. I listed it, and within a week, somebody wanted to buy the bedroom set, and that meant that I had to then pack up our entire bedroom into boxes because they wanted the furniture, the dresser, the chest, the nightstands, the bed, everything. So that's why I'm saying you want to do this decision-making. You want to allow yourself as much time as possible from when you decide you want to move to France to actually applying for your visa and coming to France. Because the hardest part of getting here is getting rid of everything and figuring out what's going to come and packing it all up. Okay, now I should have said this first, but let me talk about how we decided what things we were going to keep. Because we had a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage house. And for both of us, we had, for the most part, all of what we had collected over our adult lives. And in my case, it had been what I had collected through, this was my 3rd marriage. So I had all the old wedding presents from the first marriage, the second present, not all of them because I did split them with both husbands as we divorced. But I brought all of that stuff. That was part of what came with me. And then, of course, Jeff and I, we had everything that we had purchased over our marriage. So when it came time to deciding what was going to come with us, we knew we couldn't move the whole entire house, and we had no intention of doing it. Because truth be known, the garage, the 2-car garage in our house in Florida was sort of, half of it was like a dump site. It was where we put everything we didn't want to get rid of and had no place else for in the house. Even things we hadn't used or taken a look at in many years. So when it came time to deciding what to bring, I started in the guest room, and I decided, obviously, there was nothing that we were keeping. I sold all of that stuff. Bathrooms, we had little decorative items in there. If there were any things worth keeping, they got put in a pile on the dining room table, or what was left of it. We had a little patio table by that time. And everything else went in a box. And these were things we were going to get rid of. And I started this fairly early. So we started sort of taking apart our house, I want to say maybe a year before we actually moved. So this is how it went. And I went room to room to room. And in the living room, we had decided, okay, we're not taking any of the furniture. There were pictures on the walls, and some of the pictures were things that I had gotten long before I met or married Jeff. These were things that had been purchased in galleries over my lifetime. And I would go online and I'd sit and do the research and figure out, well, what are these paintings or pictures worth? And if they were of value, I started trying to sell them. So in order to sell these things, you have to take pictures of them, you have to measure them, you have to, if you know anything about the author, you've got to post information about the author. And it was a lot of work to do that. But I went room to room, and I certainly had lots of time to do it. And in the dining room, I had mentioned that I jumped the gun and sold our dining room set way ahead of when we were leaving. But it was okay because we knew we didn't need it. We simply, if we entertained anybody, we would use the tables we had brought inside from our patio, backyard patio, Lanai, and that was the way it was going to be. One of the hardest places to figure out what to keep and what to save was the kitchen. I had all kinds of pretty little things, and I used to, in a past life, actually before I met Jeff, I used to do these very elaborate dinner parties. And I hadn't done a whole lot of them. Actually, I don't think I had done any of them with Jeff because we had a whole different lifestyle. But I still had a lot of these pretty little dishes and serving dishes and ornate little cutesy things, and I had to go through them. Do I really need these in France? Am I really going to use these? And for the most part, I would say 90 to 95% of what was in the kitchen went. The rule that I sort of made was, what things would I really not want to live my entire life without? The rest of my entire life without. And that was pretty much what gave me the first level of things that I was going to keep. So, for example, I had a china closet in the dining room with little pieces. I had the top from my mom and dad's wedding cake that she had given me. I just couldn't bear to part that. Now, some people would have said, toss it. I had the flowers. Jeff and I didn't have a little bride and groom on top of our cake when we got married. We opted for a cake with cascading candied flowers and trim and all kinds of stuff. And I had saved all of that. So that came with us because it did have sentimental value. Jeff and I had traveled and we had purchased some Murano glass in Murano outside of Venice. Those things came with us. I had pieces of art that I had purchased on other travels. Those things came with us. Getting back to the pictures, when push came to shove towards the very end, I had a hard time selling the gallery pieces. I had one that was worth thousands of dollars. It was a numbered piece. And I couldn't find anybody who wanted to buy it. And I decided at the very end that I just wasn't going to donate it or give it away. And I realized that on this end, we were going to need to buy things for the walls. And so even though it would cost money to go buy those things, I didn't want to take something that was thousands of dollars and give it away and then have to spend a lot of money to replace it. So I brought those gallery pieces with us. So anything that meant a lot to me, for the most part, because I was the one making the decisions, came with us. Silverware. My mom had given me her flatware that she had used. It was a wedding present to her. And when I was packing up her house to get her into assisted living, she hadn't used it in years. And she said, just take it, you can use it for company. And so I brought that box of silverware home, and it literally sat under the china closet for years and years. And when I was coming here, deciding what to bring, I thought, I remember when I was a kid using that silverware every time we had company since I was a little girl, as long back as I could remember. And I thought, I'm going to bring that silverware and I'm just going to use that as our everyday silver. And so that's exactly what we did. And so every time we use a fork or spoon or a knife and I touch that, it's like a part of my history. I mean, it was, by this point, it's probably an antique because my parents got it. I think they got married in 1952. So, I mean, that's how long ago they got that silverware. And then there were crystal glasses. And I had a set of 12 crystal glasses that I loved. And when I divorced my ex-husband, He wanted half the set. So fine, I gave him 6 of the glasses. And when Jeff and I started living together, and he saw that I only had 6 glasses, and I mentioned that the other 12, there were 12, blah, 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 he surprised me. He went out one day and he bought the other 6 so that we had a set of 12 glasses for us. And so those glasses, I didn't want to leave behind, and I didn't want to donate them because but it's expensive to buy crystal. I had pots and pans that I had gotten over the years. These are some of the wedding presents from the past. I had all clad in Calphalon pots. These are expensive pots. I know because I had given some of them as wedding presents to people over the years. So I didn't want to go spend more money to buy expensive pots, whatever the expensive brand was here. And I didn't want to be cooking on crappy pots. I knew that here in this apartment, when we had come a month before and I saw what the landlord furnished with, she basically put the bare minimum in here that she could get away with and call the place furnished. So I boxed up all the pots that she put in here, stuck them in a box, and that way when we leave, I'll take my pots out of the cabinets and replace hers, and hers are sitting in a box, hidden in the guest room in one of those secret hiding places. But we're using the good pots that I brought here from the United States. So these are how we made some of the decisions. I also had a beautiful set of silver-plated candlesticks that we had bought in a thrift shop years ago, and we loved the candlesticks. And initially, we weren't going to bring those candlesticks. And one of the reasons I didn't want to bring them is because they kept tarnishing, and it was like pain in the neck to have to keep polishing them, and I hated doing it. And often I didn't, so they would look tarnished most of the time. So I tried for probably the better part of a year to sell them, coming down and down and down in price, and I couldn't give them away. Nobody wanted to buy those candlesticks. So in the last days before the mover, the big mover, showed up, they went in the box. It was like a last-minute decision. It was like, okay, I'm not donating these. We'll bring them with us to France. We'll figure out what to do with them, and if we can't, maybe we'll try to sell them here in France. And so they're here. And do we use them often? Yeah, we use them on occasion. I've got like those battery-operated candles in them now that look great. And mostly when we have company, I flip them on, and they're pretty as decor, so they're fine. So I have no regrets about bringing those extra things. We got rid of all the televisions back in the U.S. I sold one of them. And the biggest one that was in our living room, we just couldn't find anybody to buy, so we ended up donating that one. We sold the, what else do we sell? The DVD players, the cassette player, anything that we had that played music, we got rid of it. Because it's better here to buy things that have European power plugs than it is to bring the ones from the US. One thing that I decided I definitely wanted to bring, and it was a big mistake, I had just a year before we moved, I had to go out and buy a new coffee maker, and I bought a fancy one. I mean, it wasn't like $1,000, but it was, you know, $400, $500, $600, and it was a coffee maker that made espresso and cappuccino, and I loved it. It made perfect everything. And I decided, because it was fairly new and worked great, that I was bringing it. And Jeff kept telling me, no, just get rid of it. We'll buy another one. We'll buy another one. And I insisted, no, I have to have it. So we shipped it with the mover. And when it arrived, I got one of our power adapters, because you can't really use anything from the US without a power adapter. The coffee maker, the power was so intense with the coffee maker that as soon as I plugged it in, even with the adapter, in a second, that fast, it popped, smoked, and it became a paperweight. It was dead. It was trash. I might as well have donated it. And, you know, I had talked about this in other videos and people said, oh my gosh, you could have just gotten a blah, blah, blah adapter. Yeah, I could have gotten an adapter if I wanted to spend 120 some dollars. There's like a super high powered electrical adapter. You know, it's like this big and it would be one more thing sitting on my kitchen counter. We were going with the little power adapters that I was getting on Amazon, and so that was a mistake. So, and I had a Dyson hairdryer back in the US. And my beautician had told me that the Dyson hairdryers are not made to be used. If you buy it in the US, it's not made to be used in any other country. So I went on the Dyson website, and sure enough, it said that if you go to another country, you can't use efficiently. They won't guarantee the hairdryer if you try to use it with adapters in a foreign country. So the end result was they wanted you to buy one here in France because it had the different power, it was ready to go. I didn't sell it and I didn't give it away. I kept the Dyson hairdryer just in case. I mean, I spent a fortune just buying that Dyson hairdryer. And I just figured we have no plans to ever return to the US, but who knows? One day maybe I'll return to the US and I'll need a hairdryer, and I've got the Dyson put away in a box somewhere in the back of my closet. So I did keep that. But this is how we made decisions, or I made decisions on what to bring. And when it came time for Jeff to do the garage, his big responsibility, and decide what he was keeping, for the most part, I would say 99% of what was in the garage ended up going into a dumpster, this huge dumpster that I laughed when he had it delivered. I said, "You are never going to fill that. Why did you get such a huge dumpster?" He filled the dumpster and it was overflowing. So there you have it. So that's how we made decisions. So if you're trying to decide, well, what should I bring? What should I leave? What should I donate? Bring everything that is important to you that you just can't imagine spending the rest of your life without. Whether it's pictures of your family, little mementos that you picked up on vacations, presents from your child or children when they were little kids, your favorite balls from the Christmas tree that you've had over the years. Bring anything that you really enjoy having and seeing and touching, even if you don't see it and love it and touch it every single day. Okay, so let's see, what else can I share with you of decisions? You're going to first figure out what visa to get. Then you're going to figure out where you're moving to. Then you're going to figure out what are you going to bring to France with you. And then how are you going to get it to France? Well, we used an international mover. Now, if you look through old videos on my channel, you'll see that I did compare prices for shipping things. And this was back at a time when I thought that we were going to narrow our load of stuff moving to maybe 20 or 30 medium-sized U-Haul boxes. And so I contacted a group of movers, 3 of them, that did international moving. And they don't have to be located in the state where you live, because most of the international movers, they pick up all over the United States. So you just have to find an international mover. And there are a few out there. We used a company called International Movers Network. And it sounds like it's a whole group of movers, but it's one mover, one company. And they're based in New York, but they picked up in Florida. And by the way, I should tell you that I recently learned that if you contact them and you tell them, you have to be a subscriber to our channel, but if you tell them you're a subscriber to our channel, they will give you a small discount. So I recently communicated with the owner of that moving company, and he said that we had sent them lots of business. So there are a lot of people going to that mover and they're getting that little discount. So keep that in mind. For the most part, all of the movers are charging around the same thing. They charge according to volume. They don't charge by weight. If you're not moving an entire house, what they're doing is they're picking up all of your boxes and then they combine them, they take them to their warehouse. I guess they shrink wrap the entire load into one pallet or whatever number of pallets and call that your move. Put your name on the outside. And then they combine your move with a number of other clients' moves from other parts of the country. And then they ship it all by truck to the port where they're going to combine it all into one container. So we never even had to discuss buying a container or part of a container or anything. We simply called International Movers Network. He gave me a quote based on shipping 20 to 30 U-Haul boxes, medium-sized U-Haul boxes. And he said, look, anything else you decide you're going to move, don't worry about it. You just let us know shortly before we come and do the pickup how many boxes you have, so we make sure we send the right truck. And then they take everything and they give you your final price, but you'll sort of know that because you'll know what the price is by volume per unit or per volume unit. And you can pretty much get a calculator and do the math before they come and pick up. But you'll have a rough idea. So they come and they pick up your stuff, they bring it to a port where they're going to combine a bunch of shipments, and then they ship it to you. To use an international mover, it took, I think we were told, to allow between 10 and 12 weeks. So we shipped, in the end, 62 boxes of things through that international mover. And the mover told us what to put on the boxes, how to label the boxes. We didn't have to do an individual inventory, but we did have to be sort of specific on the boxes. So for example, they said, if you have a box of women's shoes, on the box it should say used. It has to say used, yeah, because you want to keep the values very low to get it into customs and not pay duty on it. So the box had to say used women's shoes in big black marker on the box. Another box may have said used women's dresses, used women's sweaters, used kitchenware, used towels, used sheets. You get the idea. And then when the mover came to pick up our stuff, the guys who were doing the pickup, they had a clipboard with lots of lines, and they just wrote in box number 1. And they would write whatever I had marked on the box, so that by the time they were done loading their truck, they had a sheet of paper or papers that was the inventory. You signed at the bottom, and they took it away. And then you didn't see your things again until they were delivered back in your home or apartment here in France. I didn't have to go chasing after customs papers. I see a lot of people on forums. They post, how do you get this form? How do you get that form? Customs wants this, customs wants that. With International Movers Network, you don't have to do anything, basically. It was the smoothest move. I think it may have been more difficult to move from the state of New Jersey down to the state of Florida with a different mover years and years ago than it was for us to do this international move with International Movers Network. Because they emailed a bunch of forms. They even sent us a template and showed what we write in each box. And then we had to print out the form, fill in the boxes with the information they told us to write in there, sign the form, scan them, email them back, and that was it. So we didn't have to worry about anything as far as chasing customs forms. International Movers Network did it all. So if you do go to them, tell them that Jeff and Ann from Postcards from Our Golden Years, that you subscribe to the channel. Be sure to subscribe down below, just in case they check to see if you're a subscriber. And they'll take care of your move. And I get nothing. I don't want anything for sending people. I just want people, my husband, just want people to benefit from our knowledge and find the deals where deals are to be had, because it is not easy to make the move from the United States to France. So let's talk about some other ways that we got our things to France from Florida. Well, after the movers had taken our boxes, and there were 62 boxes, there was one giant size framed picture and a lingerie chest that I had tried to sell and just didn't have any takers for. And I really liked the lingerie chest and felt that I could really use it for some storage in our bedroom. So we had the movers pack that up and pack up or crate that giant picture, and they took that. So the movers came at the end of March, and that's last year, the end of March. And we were actually leaving for France on the 3rd of April because our visa began, or actually our new life in France began on April 4th. Our visa actually began on April 1st. That's the effective date that the French embassy put on it. So the movers had already picked up our things in the last week of March, and we were now packing up the last bits of the house. We were getting rid of the last things that had to be taken out to the curb, donated to a nonprofit charity that has a thrift shop. And now we're kind of like, okay, well, now what are we going to do? So when we packed up the suitcases, there were a bunch of things that didn't fit. Some things, there was just no way we were going to get them into the suitcase. So, for example, we had 2 big boxes of paper files, like old tax returns, things that we had to keep forever. Other paper files. I was very good at keeping files on warranties on things that we purchased, old medical files from medical procedures we had had, all kinds of things. Files on ancestry. I had done studies on our family tree, and I had these things in paper files. So there are all kinds of numbers of paper files. Those boxes, they were not going to fit in our suitcases for sure. And the movers, I wasn't sure I wanted the movers to take them because, God forbid, the ship sinks, those files are gone forever. So I wanted to send them some way that there was a little more faith that they would reach us. So we ended up with 10 multi-size, smallish boxes, no bigger than file boxes. Most of them were actually smaller. And we shipped those things using a company called Send My Bag. Now, Send My Bag ships things by air. And in Southwest Florida, they used DHL to do the shipping for them. So we went on to the Send My Bag website, and they make it very easy. Forms you need to fill out to place the order for the pickup. And then they have a whole list of steps as far as doing the inventory, because you do have to do a fairly close inventory that has to be taped to the boxes, and another copy had to go inside the boxes. So I think that was more preparation just to get those 10 boxes ready to send with sendmybag.com than dealing with a mover and shipping all these other things that were going to come to France by ship. So those boxes were what we considered very expensive to ship. Our entire move using the international moving company, I think it was around $3,200, somewhere in there. But then we ended up spending almost $1,000, no, it was a little bit over $1,000 to ship these 10 boxes with sendmybag.com. I think it was like about $100 a box in round numbers to ship those things. So I thought it was very expensive. But the good thing with Send My Bag is that those things arrived Oh, I want to say it was about 5 days later. There was a weekend in between, and for some reason there was a delay with them going through customs. Nothing major. We didn't end up having to pay any customs duties or taxes or anything, but it ended up taking about 5 days before we saw those 10 boxes here in France, which was great because I had sent my bag, picked them up the day before we were leaving our house in Southwest Florida and going to Miami to catch a flight. And so 5 days later, we had already arrived here in Nice. And of course, we had gotten the keys to our apartment a month before because of the way we rented it. So we were here, ready, when the DHL truck pulled up. So that's how we sent these 10 boxes of other things that didn't fit in our suitcases. So that was how we got the things that we shipped here to France. Now, there were some other decisions that we had to make about how we were going to get some other things to France, things that I didn't want to go on the ship, and I didn't know that I was going to have room for in my luggage coming over to France when we actually moved. So these things were designer shoes and handbags. I was not leaving the US without them. And, you know, in all my shoes, and those of you who have followed the channel for a long time, you know there were a lot of shoes to be gone through and eliminated in this move. And when I finally narrowed it down for sure, among the shoes that I was bringing, among those 50, a little bit over 50 pairs of shoes that I brought with me, were some pairs of designer shoes. I didn't have a lot of them, but I didn't want to have to spend the money to rebuy them if, God forbid, they were lost. So I brought those over. Jeff and I had rented an apartment a month and a half before we moved here through Adrian Leeds. And I've discussed that in other videos, and you can watch those other videos. It worked great for us renting the apartment a month and a half before we got here. As soon as we received our long stay visas and our passports a month before our actual move date, we decided at the last minute to fly over here and bring some things. And we had found some giant suitcases at Goodwill nearby. We bought these giant suitcases, and we thought we'll fill those giant suitcases with as much stuff as we can get in them, of stuff, odds and ends, that has to come here that we don't want to have to use our regular ship day or our regular move day a month later to carry. So we also brought carry-on bags. And in one carry-on bag, I had all my designer purses and designer shoes. So you can see it wasn't a whole lot because they fit in one carry-on size suitcase. And what I did was I took all of those shoes and handbags out of their boxes. I put them in the dust bags only, and then I squeezed them all into a carry-on size bag. So one of my carry-on bags was nothing but designer purses and shoes in dust bags. And I didn't want to lose those boxes because if I ever decided that I wanted to sell these things, they're worth a lot more if you have the original box. So by the time I made the decision that we were going to do this, our main mover hadn't come yet. So I took a medium-sized U-Haul box and I loaded all of the boxes, the empty boxes, from my designer purses and shoes. I loaded them all into one box. Jeff couldn't believe that I was shipping a box of empty boxes, but I was determined. I wanted those boxes to get here, and I knew that when they got here, I would combine the shoes and the purses in the boxes, and all would be well. So that's what I did. So in that first trip, a month before our actual move, when we came to Nice, I had one carry-on bag that was nothing except shoes and purses, just the expensive designer shoes and purses. I had one more carry-on bag, and in that carry-on bag, I grabbed all of my It's not like I have a bazillion dollars worth of jewelry, but I grabbed my finest jewelry, the things that were gold and not costume jewelry. So I had a bunch of, all of that stuff was in boxes, and I packed that in a carry-on bag with a bunch of other things. I brought that over here as well, and I packed that fairly tightly. So our valuable, most valuable accessories, for the most part, came over in 2 carry-on bags a month before we moved here. And then in the suitcases, we brought things that we were going to need right away. I brought over-the-counter things from the bathroom cabinet and things that I had stocked up on. I brought some additional months worth of prescriptions because I had gotten, on some of my prescriptions, I managed to get 120 days of those prescriptions, and some of them I got 90 days prescriptions. And so I brought those things over. And by the way, you can do that. You go to the pharmacy and you tell the pharmacy that you want a travel supply because you're going to be on vacation for a long time. And they had me call, I think we were with Aetna at the time. So I had to call Aetna and ask them to give CVS a medical waiver so that we could get all of these extra prescriptions. I didn't tell them I was moving to France. I told them I was going on an extended vacation. And so on a lot of these things, I was able to get 120 days worth, but some things just 90 days worth. So I brought the extra months of prescriptions here in that first load of stuff, so that when we came a month before we moved, we got the keys to our apartment. It was the first time we had seen the apartment. We were able to walk around in the apartment, decide what things we need. There was still time at that point, because our movers hadn't picked anything up. There was still time to figure out if there were things that I didn't count on moving that I should really go back and rethink and pack to move. Things, for example, like sheets and towels, because we spent the night here in this apartment. When we got here a month before, it was a furnished apartment and there was a bed here, but the first thing we needed to do was get sheets for the bed, get some towels, and I went out to the Monoprix, which is not an expensive place to buy these things, but even at Monoprix prices, it was expensive to buy a sheet. And I didn't even splurge. I mean, I bought a cheap sheet, and I bought what I thought was actually a cover sheet. It turned out to be a comforter cover or duvet cover. And there were pillowcases here. So I didn't have to buy pillowcases, but I saw the price of them in Monoprix, and it was like, whoa. And towels were also expensive. And I knew that back in Florida, I had 2 trash bags full of bath towels that I had set up. They were sitting in the garage waiting for us to donate somewhere. And when we went back to Florida to finish our packing, I grabbed a number of those bath towels and beach towels out of those bags and threw them in boxes so that they would come here instead of us having to buy new towels. So that's how we got our stuff over here. Of course, on the actual day that we moved, we ended up still with a lot of stuff because I emptied out what was left in my closet. And we ended up with 4 giant size suitcases, because the suitcases we had used on that first trip over here, one of them broke on the way over here, so that just went out in the trash. We brought everything else back to Florida, and we repacked those suitcases, and we had more suitcases there with everything else that we wanted to be here, clothes that we were going to need initially. Because when we moved here, it was April. And we knew that everything that we sent to be shipped with the mover could take as much as 12 weeks to get here. So by the time it was going to arrive was going to be July. And it was still chilly in Nice when we got here. So we brought over all the clothes we were going to need for spring and early summer in the suitcases with us when we actually moved in the beginning of April. So those suitcases were loaded with all of that stuff. There were some odds and ends things in the kitchen, that last minute decision, threw them in my suitcases. Oh, some odds and ends boxes of tea that I had left. Anything that would fit in those giant suitcases that we had. And we were coming here on Lufthansa business class. So Lufthansa business class allowed each of us 2 checked suitcases. I think each one could weigh like 62 pounds. You can get a lot of stuff in a big suitcase that way. So when we came over here for the actual move, we had 4 giant suitcases. That's 2 apiece. We also had 4 carry-on size bags, because technically we were each allowed to have 2 carry-on bags as well. We also had 2 backpacks. We have a dog carrier, and we had our little dog. So all of that came with us, and it didn't cost us anything extra to bring all of that on the plane. So that's what we used on flying day to actually come here. And we brought all of what was left in our house that we were not donating, giving away, or trashing. Thanks for bearing with me. I know this was another long video, but I wanted to help those of you who have not been following us in particular, those of us who haven't been following us for years, because this channel is now over 4 years old, but probably for the last 2 to 3 years, most of our videos have been about the process of getting ready to move to France. And I know some of you have been following us, but maybe when you started following us, you weren't ready to move. It was just, you were years away from retirement. And now it's finally here. Now it's time to start thinking about it. Or you're frightened by what's going on in the United States and you're thinking, oh, I got to get out now. I got to figure out how to do this. Oh my God, I don't know where to begin. Well, in the last video, I told you how to do the visa. In this video, I hope I've given you enough information to get started on finding a mover and figuring out what to bring and how to get it to France. So if you're not a subscriber, I'm going to say it again as I say it all the time. Please subscribe. Twice as many people watch our videos as subscribe. And somebody said to me just today in comments, they said, I don't think people know how to subscribe. Well, over here is a QR code. See that code right there on the screen? If you take your cell phone and you open the camera app and you've got the lens, don't take a picture, just shine the lens at this QR code right there. It'll suddenly, a link will pop up. And if you click on the link, it takes you to the main page of our YouTube channel. And if you click on it, it'll say subscribe, and you just click subscribe. And that's all there is to it. And if you don't want to do it that way, you can do it the old-fashioned way. You look below here, you take your mouse or your finger, and you sort of hover from the bottom of the video. You hover just a little bit, and there's a little round ball with a picture, like a little circle, with a picture of us, our icon, if you will, from our YouTube channel. And you just click on it, and it brings up a few different options, and one of them is subscribe. And if you just click subscribe, voila, you're subscribed. And then you look a little further over, and you'll see a little bell. And if you want to get reminders every time we put up a new video or publish a new video, you click that little bell and it'll give you options. Do you want to be notified for all of them or other options? And you just click that, and then you're all done. So it's very, very simple. The QR code up here, that's the easiest way to subscribe. So thankful that somebody came up with the idea of making these QR codes. So subscribe to our video. It really does help our channel grow. And the more our channel grows, the more YouTube will show it to other people, and it can help more people just like you find their way to France. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.